Hey, pull up a chair. It's Hacks on Tap with David Axelrod, Robert Gibbs, and Mike Murphy.
Because they want to get him good and strong, so a little before debate time he gets a shot in the ass, and they want to strengthen him up. So he comes out, he'll come out, I say he'll come out all jacked up, right? All jacked up.
So there you have it, Murphy. Shecky Trump warming up for the debate.
I'm for the shot in the ass. If Dr. Landry's still around, I say wake him up and get. I want everything out of Biden that can possibly be, because we're fighting evil here. And by the way, I think Trump gets a daily shot in the ass of some sort of orange dye. I mean, he is in a glass house as far as that sort of stuff is concerned. But what a debate. And to explain it to us, an old compadre of yours, David. You want to introduce him?
Yes, I do, because he is my old partner and the greatest campaign manager of our generation. Actually, my generation is a little older than your generations. But David Plouffe, who is also the co-host of, is it still called The Campaign Manager?
It is, yes.
The Campaign Manager podcast with Kellyanne Conway. So he's ready for sharp repartee. But Plouffe, the thing that is so hilarious is the degree to which Republicans are scrambling around now after spending 5 years telling people that Biden was old, decrepit, incompetent, couldn't tie his own shoes, and so on. And now he's a debate behemoth. He's going to come in all doped up and ready for bear. I heard Doug Burgum, the campaigning for vice president, Doug Burgum on CNN this weekend saying, he's been debating since the Nixon, and, he's been in all these national debates, and, he's going to be really, really good. So, Murphy, this is a head-spinning turn. It turns out that Biden is a behemoth out there astride the debate.
My navigation compass in politics doesn't head to the Doug Burgum High Lantern very often, because it clearly is not in a fixed position. This guy's taking Faust pills, anything to VBP.
But they're all doing it. That's the talking point.
Yeah. Well, of course, it is the venerable sport of saying, well, the other guy's Pericles, and I'll just be lucky to find the hall. But they're both working with limited debating skills here. Let's just say this is kind of a fair fight. They're both old. Neither of them are in their prime as communicators, but sure, the Trump people are trying to build the Biden thing up. I think this debate is kind of spin-proof because it's going to be so self-evident. It's also, there's no crazy Roman circus audience. That is a big factor. It's going to be the camera on both of them, naked on a rock, as I said last week, to fill up your dream journal. And I think all the spin won't matter in the end. I think
the naked on the rock thing is disturbing. I don't want to think it.
Well, under the lights.
Plouffe, how much is this going to mean? There are people who say, well, it's a June debate, there's plenty of time and so on. But there are negative narratives about both these guys out there that they need to defeat in this debate, starting with the president.
Well, X, you and I know, now we did go 5-1. The one loss was pretty bad.
Yes.
But presidential campaigns have always mattered. They don't matter much for Senate anymore, or governor or mayor. They matter a lot. And so I agree with Murphy. This one's spin-proof. First of all, listen, Trump and the Republicans 2 weeks ago were doing the opposite of what they're doing now. They were saying Biden won't be able to stand. He's horrible.
Right.
That was really stupid. So now they're trying to do this drug thing. By the way, that's a pretty big needle that would have to, Murphy, penetrate Trump's posterior every
there's
every
a veterinary supply house that's volunteered to help.
But I think it's spin-proof because, A, you're going to have a lot of both original audience, and everyone who doesn't watch it will see it on social media within a few hours, right? So you're going to see it, number one. And number two, we know from the polling out there, voters are being asked, their expectations, and their expectations for Biden are really low. So what's fascinating to me, Ax, is they both have Biden's challenge here is doable because he just needs to be better, more aggressive, more with it, more concise than people are expecting and have the stamina. Trump, on the other hand, I don't think he's capable of doing this. If he basically just said, hey, inflation's too high, the border's out of control, and here's what I'm going to do about it, he would pass a threshold. I don't think he's capable of doing that. So, but this is an enormously important debate because right now, the reason, and listen, the New York Times came out today, we're talking on Tuesday, with their first of what's going to be a daily, model in the battleground states, and Trump's winning all of them. Now, those are polls, it's a model, but I think that's where the race stands. Biden can win this race, but he won't do it unless some healthy percentage of people right now who say they're concerned about his vitality and age get over that.
Yeah,
and this is his best opportunity to, it's his best. I don't want to say it's his last because we have one more debate, but I think this is by far his best. Maybe. Yeah,
maybe.
Exactly. We shouldn't count on it. Yeah.
David or Plouffe, I'm going to switch to Plouffe and X here because we got two Davids. You make the key point. The dependent variable in this race isn't Trump. You can make him worse, but he's already in trouble. People know he's a horrible orangutan. That's done. It's the Biden number.
Yep.
Can Biden convince people he's not a doddering old guy who doesn't get it on the economy? And if Biden can move the Biden needle, he's going to do great. If Biden goes off on a wander about the economy is better than you think, I brought a few statistics here. Get your pens out at home, write them down. And Trump gets the Dr. Landry shot and can try to just hammer a few things. And I agree with Plouffe, that's going to be hard. Then it'll be Trump's night.
I think he would need a different cocktail.
Kind of a downer.
I mean, if you guys were coaching Trump, you'd be looking at those numbers and their own numbers, and you'd be saying, you know what, we can win this freaking thing, and all you have to do is behave like a human being. All you have to do is not do what you did in that first debate 4 years ago, where you scared the hell out of everybody and acted like a petulant school child, and that's what's standing between you and really taking a big step forward here. Mike Tyson said, everybody has a plan until they're punched in the face. The question is, when he gets a provocative question or when Biden says something that sticks in his craw, which Biden will, does he keep his shit together?
Right. And your Tyson quote's so important. The three of us have prepared a lot of people for debates. And let's say that Trump agrees with that strategy and his team does. Let's say that's what they're practicing. These are human beings, and they get on stage, and you don't know where the hell the debate's going to go. And I think it's highly unlikely, even if Trump agrees, he's going to be more docile Trump. He's going to be more issue-focused Trump. He's going to just hammer the border, hammer immigration. Once Biden gets under his craw, he's not going to do that. And I think with Biden, Mike, there's two things Biden has to accomplish. One is, he's got to surprise people, I think, a little bit with his vitality.
If he enters and leaves under his own power, the bar is so low. I don't think it's enough. But just staying on his feet and being engaged for 90 minutes will be helpful.
Well, hard, but the other thing, and I'm sure the Biden team are counseling Biden, Mike, not to make the mistake you talked about, which is get into Statland and tell people who don't think the economy is good, it's good, but not to defend your record. And this is where incumbents struggle.
Yeah, it's very hard, particularly grumpy old Irish incumbents.
Plouffe knows this. We had the date of the first debate in 2012 circled in red because we knew the history of presidents in the first debates. They haven't debated. They're not used to people being in their grill. They know too much, and they're inclined to defend their record rather than deliver message and go on the attack and set up a contrast, because you don't want it's very rare when you want the election to be a referendum on you. You want to turn it into a contrast. Biden's inclination is to want to defend his record. He wants to extol his record. And the question is, can he park all of that and just land his lines that set up a contrast?
I don't think he can. You're right. But I think this thing is going to disintegrate quickly, because they're going to get under each other's
podcast
skin.
or the debate?
Well, we've already disintegrated here. It's our tactic. But no, Trump's going to say, Biden's going to poke Trump, and Trump's going to go right to Hunter Biden. How's your jailbird son doing? And then Biden's going to get pissed, and it's going to be this mano-a-mano thing. It's going to kind of be like the old Adam Sandler, Bob Barker golf fight.
I was just thinking that.
Except two Bob Barkers. And it is going to, I mean, I hope it doesn't for Biden's sake, but I think they both have big red buttons on their forehead. And, it's not hard to get under Biden's skin. And Biden's been probably waiting years to get his verbal hands on Trump. And Trump's just a blowhard who's good at poking, and Trump will say anything. So I think it's going to be a train wreck.
On that getting under Biden's skin thing, I've been of the mind that if I'm Trump, I'm not going to attack him on there is an attack, which I'll mention in a second, on Hunter Biden that is undoubtedly coming. But on this gun conviction, the Republicans have been reluctant to attack because they don't like the gun law. But I could see him turning to Biden and saying, that was a bullshit conviction. I can't believe you wouldn't pardon your own kid. You're not going to help your son, who's been, in this case, not in the other case, but in this case, treated what I think is even unfairly. You wouldn't do that. I just don't understand that.
I think he will, but handled properly, that is a huge moment.
It is.
For
If
Biden.
he does handle it properly.
Right. I thought you'd ask me to pardon you.
Right. To say, listen, it's my son. I love him dearly, but I trust the Justice Department. I trust the rule of law. I'm not going to pardon. I mean, to me,
I'm not sure that I would go there at all. I think I would say, listen, man, I love my son, and you'd stay out of my relationship with my son. But you want to talk about pardons? Let's talk about your promise to pardon the
January
hundreds
6th.
and hundreds of people who invaded the Capitol. Let's talk about your promise to pardon yourself, or to vacate your own cases. I'll worry about my family, but people should worry about their democracy.
I think this is all three-dimensional chess for these guys. But I think maybe Biden will be adroit at that pivot stuff. I think they're going to tell him to be Mount Rushmore, which is solid, full speed ahead. I'm on your side, he's on his side, and not try any pirouettes, because I don't know if the Biden toolbox has that.
Yeah. Well, you're right that I think one of the goals here has to keep the playlist short. Right.
Yes.
This can't be like a complex series of maneuvers. You've got to give him a theme. And so let's talk about, I think they're actually circling around the right one, which is, I'm out there fighting for you and fighting for your future. He's fighting every day for himself, and he's consumed by his past and vengeance and retribution. How's that going to help your life?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I have a plan for the middle class. He has an enemies list.
Yes. That's Murphy. You ought to do this for a living.
Yeah, when you look at the list of attribute polling and issue polling, it's kind of all red for Biden, except for who will fight for people like you. Biden still has an example there. And so I think you've got to basically lean into that and paint the picture of, Axe, this is one of the things we did back in 2012, and Romney was twisted in knots because of how he won the primary. But we were going to say what's not going to help us recover more economically is to fight about health care. Right. He wants to revisit the Affordable Care Act, Obamacare, that was built on Romney care.
Right.
So for Biden to paint that picture, which is, I've been focused on rounding up Republican votes to, build roads and bridges and chips.
Right.
He's going to be focused on rounding up Democrats to put them in jail and investigate them. It's not going to help you. Like, I actually think that he can profit from that. But Mike, I agree with you. I mean, he's not going to do like a triple axle, but there has to be a few moments where he tangles with Trump.
He would win the race if he could. I brought my skates tonight. Take a look at this.
That would really start the shot in the ass thing.
But basically, Biden has to be precise. Trump doesn't have to be. That's not his debating style.
Right.
Whether it's Roe v. Wade, whether it's this exchange with Hunter, whether it's painting the picture about Trump's not going to be focused on your problems, it's got to be precise. It's got to be slowed down. It's got to land, because both were the original audience. But let's not forget, there's going to be a whole bunch of people critical of this election that aren't going to watch the debate, but we'll see clips. And you got to make sure you have enough of those, right?
Yeah.
You just have to.
I mean, I totally agree with this, because Trump's story is mad spray. Biden's got to nail a few things. But what the thing David and all of us were talking about, the motive contrast, that also gives Biden a way to do something he hasn't done that he has to do badly, which is, what do you get in a second term? Right now, Biden's selling. Here's his offer.
100%.
His offer is, you don't get Trump.
Right.
Well, that's not enough.
Right.
Because Trump equals better economy.
It's also, you look at a guy, part of the antidote to an 81-year-old guy is a guy who's talking about the future and not just the past.
Yep.
And so absolutely, Absolutely, he has to do that. Plouffe, I want to ask you, you do work in the social media industry. It seems to me that one of the storylines here is that the people who you most need to reach, who are hanging out there in this election, probably aren't going to be watching this debate.
Right.
They're less engaged. They don't get their information from newscasts and traditional news sources, and they'll probably get a lot of it on TikTok, on Instagram,
On YouTube.
and so like I guess one of the interesting things to watch is what's getting clipped and sent out there and going viral even during the debate and after the debate.
This is key. Now, listen, I think there will be some younger voters that tune in, and they'll probably tune out because it's going to be pretty hard to watch. But
unless he does a triple axel,
right? There will be probably tens of millions of people who are going to be decisive in this election that are only going to experience the debate in 48 hours afterwards. So here's what we know will go viral: is if one of them has a senior moment, one of them makes a mistake. We know that. The campaigns have control about what they're going to be pushing through these platforms, right? So if they think they have a good moment, they can put money behind it, not on TikTok, but the other, platforms allow advertising. So that is going to be kind of the game within the game, which is, yes, there's how did the debate go? And as you guys know, both campaigns are going to have, swing voters sitting there with dials and assessing every word that these guys say. So the campaigns have a pretty good sense for people who watch the debate, but how people witness it afterwards. So there's two things. There's going to be those clips. And then, as you guys know, historically, sometimes the meme or the story coming out on debate night shifts over time. And so there is a battle to see what was the debate about, not just Thursday night, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, what's happening on social media. Right. And so this is absolutely essential. And I think that the Biden campaign, I think, is being very sophisticated about YouTube, about Instagram, which is great. Trump is obviously on TikTok himself. He's got 7 million people. So I think that's something I'm going to watch carefully is what is the Trump team doing on TikTok, because they have the ability to reach a bigger audience right now.
And more friends in China. An old trick I used to do a lot.
You're offending Trump because he is a consultant over there. So
useful idiot, as Vladimir Ilyich used to say. An old trick I used to do a lot in statewide debates when it counted was the next 3 days, I would buy 100 radio spots. I mean, a massive buy, and I would cut a Voices on the Street thing the night after the debate. Who won the debate? Yeah. Oh, God, he was crazy. I couldn't believe it. That guy's going to raise my tax. It's the worst. Always worked. Now, the modern version of that is flood TikTok with people reacting.
Right.
Echoing what you want. And I hope the Biden guys are on top of that, because you're right. This thing is a lump of clay for 48 to 72 hours.
Well, Mike, the radio thing's brilliant. I think what you want is, so what you can control, you control. You've got influencers that you're talking to, pushing something. But then what you really hope is organically, a bunch of young people on TikTok and YouTube say, you know what? He was better than I thought. That's all they have to say.
And then you amplify the hell out of them. Right.
That's all
and
you
I
have
gotta
to say.
believe, Plouffe, that one of the things both campaigns are doing is activating their network of influencers who will go out and say those things. I mean, there's a very sophisticated game going on underneath. All of us troglodytes from a different century are going to be analyzing the full debate, and it'll be important. I mean, there's no doubt about it, because there will be a lot of echoes of it. But this game within the game is going to be really, really important.
The other thing, I think the Biden people, and it'll be hard with Biden, the nonverbal's important, because that's what feeds the image moments that then get amplified and re-edited in social media. I mean, Biden's got to smile. If Biden looks like he's having a good time, that is worth a lot, because Trump always is dour and pissed off and looks constipated.
Okay, then let's take a break right here, and we'll be right back.
We follow science developments, David, here at Hacks on Tap, and I got to tell you about Lumen, the world's first metabolic coach. Now, that's a device that measures your metabolism through your breath. And on the app, which is on your phone connected to the device, it lets you know if you're burning fat or carbs and gives you tailored guidance to improve your nutrition. And you could use that. Also improve your workout, sleep, and even, and with the debate coming up, help us with stress management.
Yeah, man, we need that. All you have to do is breathe into your Lumen first thing in the morning, and you'll know what's going on with your metabolism, whether you're burning mostly fats or carbs. Then Lumen gives you a personalized nutrition plan for that day based on your measurements.
You can breathe into it, the Lumen device, before or after workouts and meals, so you know exactly what's going on in your body in real time. And my body being a temple, I need to do that. Lumen will give you tips to keep you on top of your health game. This is pretty interesting technology, I gotta say.
Yeah, it is. You breathe into it after your workouts, and I'll breathe into it after my meals. Your metabolism is your body's engine. It's how your body turns the food you eat into the fuel that keeps you going. And because your metabolism is at the center of everything your body does, optimal metabolic health translates to a bunch of benefits, including easier weight management, Murphy, improved energy levels, better fitness results, better sleep, and more.
It can also track your cycle, David, as well as the onset of menopause, and adjust your recommendations to keep your metabolism healthy through hormonal shifts so you can keep up your energy and stave off those cravings.
So if you want to take the next step in improving your health, go to lumen.me/hacks to get 15% off your Lumen.
That's lumen.me/hacks. And if you can't remember that, you got metabolism problems and you need a Lumen. So go to lumen.me/hacks for 15% off your purchase.
Thank you, Lumen, for sponsoring this episode. Mike, I went back and watched the two debates from last time, and they were pretty striking. First of all, it was striking because I think in retrospect, Biden did really well in those debates. I mean, he counterpunched. He was confident. He knew when to pivot to camera and talk to the American people. He knew when to give Trump a big blow-off line. He really held his own in those debates. If he could do anything like that in these debates, it's going to go really well. But
yeah, it's also the trap, because they're going to compare him this time to the tape.
Right.
Ooh, what happened to the old Biden? This is the new old can't do it Biden.
He does not look exactly like he looked 4 years ago. He doesn't speak exactly like he spoke 4 years ago. This is a problem. But to your point about one of the things he did very well was, he laughed, he smiled when Trump was outrageous, and shook his head. I mean, he had all those moves down, and I'm sure they were working on him and probably showing him that tape.
It's risky, but I'd be tempted to make the first TikTok coach ploy in the history of the world, which is just smile and do the old hand circle by the ear thing, because it would own TikTok cut against Trump.
Well, maybe they could do that with an AI Biden.
They probably could. That's true.
I think that's brilliant, Murphy. That is brilliant.
I mean, it would go forever, and it's easy to do. I think Biden could do it.
Easy to do. I mean, the visual point is so, particularly in this format, which is just a news studio. But I think Axe, this is the added degree of difficulty for Biden, because I also watched the debates and I was reminded, that he was strong. I actually think the other moment when he told Trump that, will you just shut up, man?
Yeah,
that was a good moment. Not about policy, by the way, showing strength. And
he also basically was saying what the American people were
think.
thinking.
Right.
Yeah.
But he does look a lot different. He sounds different. And there's nothing you can do about that. You just got to price that into the equation, that basically getting enough people to say, he didn't make a mistake, or he was stronger than I thought, or he had a few good lines. I love your crazy visual, Murphy, but that's what you want. And the bar is so exceedingly low, right?
Yeah. If Biden gets a great moment off, it'll be rocket fuel for him.
Yes, but it is also 90 minutes. And the thing is, even if the audience dwindles a little bit, if you have a shitty moment in the last 5 minutes, that can dominate the after game, right? And so you got to run through the tape here in a way. But I think the way you got to think about these debates is, okay, so let's say Trump attacks Biden on whatever the issue is, and Biden's then going to respond for 2 minutes. Like, it's got to be 10 seconds of defense. That's not true. Here's what I did. Then it's got to be like almost all the rest contrast. Then to your point, Axe, which is what I want to do in my next term, is focus on X, Y, and Z. It's the formula is not hard.
And the contrast. You can pick any issue, and there's a good contrast to be struck. And even on those issues of vulnerability, like immigration, he should turn very quickly to the fact that we helped negotiate the toughest bill ever on border security, and we did it with the most conservative member of the Senate, and this guy killed it, and he was very honest about it. And him being honest is something to note. He was very honest about it, and he said, I don't want that because Biden will get credit. Let's wait, and we'll deal with it later.
No, I totally agree with this. If he can do it, here's the one. If the great god of debate prep landed in his flying saucer and said, "All right, you get one thing, Murphy," I would say Biden's got to have. Biden is going to hear 10 times in this debate. Just remember, the economy was better when I was president. Stuff cost less. Now it costs more. How were you 4 years ago? Were you better off? He's going to hear that 100 times. And every time that's going to bait Biden to say, well, I just brought my statistics along. And I know we talked about this for a minute, but Biden needs welded into his head a pivot out of that, or they're going to bait him into bad Biden.
Yeah.
That's the one thing I think if they can avoid, that'll get them halfway there.
Yeah. Well, and I think you guys mentioned the litany of stuff that he can turn to, healthcare, pharmaceutical prices,
insulin.
And, there's a bunch of stuff he can turn to where Trump has signaled he wants to repeal the bill that lowered the insulin. He wants to destroy the Affordable Care Act. He wants to hand to he said to the oil industry, give me $1 billion. You can write your own rules. How's that going to work for you? He can, there's a litany of stuff that he can go to, and every one should be punctuated by, just remember, he's out for himself. Okay.
Right.
I'm fighting for you. I may not land it every time, but that, I'm thinking about the guy in Scranton and Claymont and he's thinking about the guy in Mar-a-Lago.
Here's one for you guys. I think, again, it might be a bit adroit for the toolbox, but Trump's also going to do world in disarray. We're not respected. Yes. We're weak and everything. I think there's a good flip for Biden in that, which is it is a dangerous world. You can see it every day on the news. But if you enter the Oval, we're gonna fight our friends and suck up to our enemies. It's going to be more dangerous chaos in the world. Your idea of strength is blowing up NATO, our strongest allies. Your idea of strength is sucking up to Vladimir Putin and the murdering genocidal dictator North Korea, who's your love bro, yada, yada, yada. And try to kind of double down on the fact people think the world's going to hell to raise the stakes with Trump, or too tricky. Because I think he needs an answer on that other than defensiveness of, well, actually, we have a 9-point plan and, Tony Blinken's a great guy and 1 million air miles.
In watching that debate, particularly the beginning, I don't know whether it was the first or second debate, but Trump, it was the second debate, and COVID came up right away. And Trump was like, well, the whole world is dealing with this, not just us, and we're dealing with it better than the rest of the world, and we're on the way back, and this and that. And honestly, it sounded like Biden's answers on inflation, and it was bad for Trump. Because he wasn't hooking up with the reality that people were living. If I were Biden's folks, I'd show them that answer from Trump and say, he was the incumbent. This is how he handled the situation, and it actually hurt him. So you don't want to do that when it comes to the economy. You want to go on the pivot and go on the attack, or on these other issues, as you point out, Murphy. Yeah, this is such a big test for Biden, whether he can resist that impulse to to take the bait and try and persuade people of of things that they don't believe. Listen, on this issue, one exchange they had last time that I thought was promising for Biden to raise here was on the issue of abortion. Yeah. And I don't know, you guys, because Trump stood up there and said, Biden said, Roe v. Wade is on the ballot. Trump said, I don't know what you're talking about. You don't even know how these judges are going to vote and this and that and so on. I don't know. It's not going to. And it's like, what an opportunity to say, he stood on this stage 4 years ago and he lied to you. He lied to you. And where are we now? And then just go to town on, all these horrible. This is a place where statistics help about what's happened as a result of that. And he said, and rest assured, whatever he says here, he's going to go with his base because he does what's good for Donald Trump, not for the women of this country.
Let me pitch something. Yeah. How about this? Donald, you're a coward on abortion. You're for any state's position because you're afraid to take one. What are you going to do in Florida where you vote? You're for or against. I'll tell you where I am. I'm going to defend boom, boom. I think you're a gutless, you're a coward, and you're acting like a politician. You're a weather vane. Now, get some backbone, pal. Take a side. What are you afraid of? And just go at them.
Yeah, but making this Roe v. Wade moment is key, and it will require precision. Like Biden will have to say, what you ought to say in the first debate on this date in 2020, you said this, you lied. Now you're saying your proudest accomplishment is getting rid of Roe v. Wade. You're probably going to have 2 more Supreme Court justices, whoever wins. Let's talk about IVF. Let's talk about contraception. Let's talk about all the hells that have been unleashed. So I think, Murphy, you can either go, he's a coward and he'll tell you what you want to hear, or you try and lay this all on him. I'd probably vote for the latter, but this is a key moment. Like Axe, I remember in the first debate.
I don't think the two are mutually exclusive.
No, they're not. They're not because this is a chess
match,
with
right? You're a coward on abortion. Right. You won't take a stand. I dare you, and then you go to the second punch is everything else.
So this is one where if this moment doesn't happen, and if it's not a dominant moment for Biden, it's a huge missed opportunity.
Yeah,
right.
No,
it doesn't matter.
It's their best bullet. It's their wooden stake.
Right.
This brings me to a different point. I want to come back to a moment that Biden had, but since you brought this up, we act like there are 2 guys on the stage. There are 4 people there. There are 2 moderators, Jake Tapper and Dana Bash, and the guys on the stage. They are not potted plants in this deal. What they ask and how they ask it will also have something to do to say about this debate. And I want to just say, as a disclaimer, I have no idea what they're going to ask or what they're going to say. I mean, we're trying to divine. If you're prepping for the debate, you're looking at everything they've said and every question they've asked for the last, 2 years, and you're trying to divine where they're going to go. But for sure, they're going to ask an abortion question. For sure, they're going to ask that. For sure, they're going to ask I'd be surprised if they didn't ask, do you think the last election was Joe, or some version of that? But they are going to ask questions that are provocative. And, so yes, it's on Biden to make sure these moments happen. Some of them, if they don't happen, will be a failure of moderation. I guess since I work for CNN, I shouldn't say that, but a failure of moderation as well as a failure on the part of any one candidate.
Well, but any candidate has to say, you go into the debate and Axe, we kind of screwed this up in the first debate in 2012. Well, like Romney's 47% comment didn't come up in a question, but our guy didn't unleash that. So both Trump and Biden need to have 3 to 5 things, no matter what the moderators ask. Say, I gotta get right. Here. Right?
Absolutely.
Let's stop for a minute and listen to a word from one of our fine sponsors.
Support for today's episode comes from OneSkin. And if you have sensitive skin, you're going to want to hear about their scientifically proven topical supplements.
Wow, I do have sensitive skin. I have the gift of Irish genetics.
Everybody is sensitive, yeah.
Yeah, I look like I'm made out of rice paper. I'm white as white can be, or I'm red like a lobster in the sun. People point and laugh. So I want to hear all about this stuff. I want to get free from over 1,500 chemicals and preservatives that can make skin red, irritated, or itchy. Tell me more. These products are safe for sensitive skin like mine. I like this. It's just one of the reasons that OneSkin has earned the Skin Safe seal of approval. So tell me more, David, because I want some. How do we get it?
Anything that helps you be less red and irritated will make this a better podcast. Well, I know someone who's actually tried the product, and that's our producer, Hannah McDonald. Hannah, what say you about the experience?
Another daughter of Ireland. I'll bet you got the skin that I have. How'd it go?
Oh, it's great. I have very fair, sensitive skin, and it's been wonderful to put on, and I really admire the packaging.
So there you have it.
I want to congratulate Hannah on learning from her boss, David Axelrod, the Chicago way by stealing the free packages for me and David and testing it out herself. So ship me half of one that's left because I need this stuff. I want to treat the symptoms rather than the root cause of aging has long been the norm. I don't want to do that. Most skincare available on the market is designed to provide temporary reduction in visible signs of aging, addressing just the surface symptoms of an underlying decline in skin health.
In a third-party, 12-week clinical study performed by third-party research organization, OS1 Face was clinically proven to strengthen the skin barrier, improve skin health markers, and diminish visible signs of aging. Wrinkles were diminished in 87% of users.
They combine tissue engineering, data analysis, and cutting-edge longevity science to create the world's most effective product to target skin aging. OneSkin believes the purpose of skincare is not just to improve how we look, well, that's enough for me, I'm shallow, but to optimize our skin biology so it's more resilient to the aging process. They create the next level of skincare.
OneSkin is the world's first skin longevity company. By focusing on the cellular aspect of aging, OneSkin keeps your skin looking and acting younger for longer. So get started today with 15% off using code HACKS at oneskin.co.
That's 15% off oneskin.co, no com.co, with code HACKS. After you purchase, they'll ask you where you heard about them. So please support our show and tell them we sent you.
We should talk about that 2012 thing, Murphy. This is a nightmare that we lived together. I mean, there was breaking through that. We mentioned it earlier, but breaking through that sort of incumbent impulse is it's really hard. And he knew in some way that he knew going in. Remember, Plouffe and I went into the locker room beforehand to give him the old attaboy before the debate, and he said, let's just get this over with and get out of here. And we left the locker room and we said, we are going to get our asses kicked in this debate. And it was a total tip-off. But I mentioned this before, this thing that there was a moment that was striking to me in the second debate that is going to come back for sure. This will be one of Trump's things, in which Biden heatedly denied this Hunter laptop story, that this was Hunter's laptop and all of that. And he leaned on the 50 intelligence people who said this is probably a Russian scam and stuff. Obviously, it was Hunter's laptop, and now Hunter is dealing with the consequences of it. Doug Burgum mentioned that on Sunday. I don't think he thought of that on his own. Maybe they're just trying to get into Biden's head, and they don't want to go, and they're not going to go there. My guess is he goes there.
For sure.
I would be surprised if he doesn't. Now, I don't know if the country cares because it's complicated 8-dimensional chess, but it could, again, trigger a back-and-forth squabbling old guy fight and burn up the clock, which is an opportunity cost to the stuff you want to do if you're Biden.
Great point, Mike. But listen, David, I think if that comes up, I think probably the best you do is just say, listen, my son, who I love dearly, has already been convicted on separate, issue. He's being investigated. And, I respect the rule of law, unlike you. Like, I think it actually could be a really powerful
That's
moment.
why that would be the thing to think about.
I would almost welcome it
in playing that card.
But I'm not sure how much. Now, Trump's team's probably saying a little chess. Trump is more of a checkers player. That may be being too kind. But I actually think this exchange, because while Murphy, I agree 80% of this or maybe 90% of this is just improving Biden's standing, you do want to find those opportunities to remind people that you don't want to sign up for the Trump thing again, right? And I think the way Biden has responded to his son versus the way Trump's responded to his own stuff, there's a chasm there.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. I agree.
Yeah, the reason Trump may go there is part of, this whole Biden crime family stuff that the House has propagated, that we're hundreds some odd Inspector Clouseaus wandering around looking for clues that never show up. But the reason they're doing it is because one of Trump's go-to tactics is to say, everybody else is guilty of what he's being accused of. So he has to make Biden out to be corrupt. This thing, Crooked Joe, is so, like, he had Sleepy Joe last time, which, maybe unfair, but probably one that would land a little here. Crooked Joe just doesn't really compute.
No, it
No.
lands with a thud. It's not Trump's
And it
best
may
work,
land with
as
some
we
portion
might
of the base, but Trump does it because he wants to say, his whole message in some ways is, the world is corrupt and messy, and we all swim in the same swamp. I'm just honest about it.
So the prep move is they ought to unveil a new one in a retort for Biden. One phrase: needy Donald, cowardly Donald, something. And so the shift of the attention goes from the one that's kind of a flat joke we've heard 1,000 times to the new interesting one that lights Trump on fire. I like going at him as coward anytime on any topic because it goes right for his strength, and I think he's vulnerable on that because deep down Trump knows he's totally a fraud.
Right.
So they ought to have something really tight for that.
So Trump's message is everything's out of control. He's not in
4
command.
years. It was so
I'm
much
strong.
better.
In 4 years, yeah. Put me back in the game. I will fix everything. And the four things that he's going to use are immigration, inflation, crime in the cities.
Not respected, the world on fire,
And
not
the
respected
wars,
at the
wars. So Biden has to be ready to counterpunch on every single one of those. The crime thing is interesting because in some ways it's a bunch of bullshit. I mean, crime is down 18%. Crime was higher when Trump was president than now. Trump will say that's bullshit. Everybody knows what's going on. And it's true that during the pandemic and after, crime in the cities, homicides have gone down, but there are crimes that are more prevalent that are irritating to people, strong-arm burglaries and carjackings and things like that. So they've created a kind of, aura of that Trump is taking advantage of. What do you think Biden does there?
Well, first you go for the joke. I know 34 crimes that have been recently solved. And then you go into your stuff,
Yeah. I actually think, first of all, I'd say, listen, there was a crime wave when you were president, Donald Trump. 2020 massive crime wave. Okay. Yeah. It's come down. But let me be clear, I'm
you
not
could say one in the White House and one out of the White House.
Right. But I'd also like Biden. This is a strength of his. It was in 20. And I think he should underscore it, which is I'm not a defund the police Democrat. I believe in investing in law enforcement,
Which he'd be good at because he believes that. Yeah.
Yes. And so I think you don't want to run a victory lap. You want to say crime's down. It was way up under you. But listen, any crime's too much. And this is what we got to do. I think that this is one where of all the issues you mentioned, David, I think the trickiest one is immigration. Not immigration, because I think he's got a really strong retort both on what he's done and the border. It's inflation. And actually, I have a question for you guys, because you've seen a bunch of studies from economists over the last couple of days saying Trump's policies will devastate the economy. But I think that gets into stat land.
No, I wouldn't go there.
Yeah.
I wouldn't go there. I would go to let me tell you something. People are struggling with and have been through the pandemic, started with him, have been struggling with higher costs. The question is, who's going to fight every day to try and bring them down? On healthcare, and then you go to on pharmaceuticals, and then you go to that. But I think a big one that he needs to highlight here is the tax cut. He says, look, I want to give a tax cut to parents for childcare, or I want to give a childcare tax credit. He wants to he wants to make permanent his $2 trillion tax cut for millionaires and billionaires. It's really a question of what you think is important. I know. Well, we're handicapped here because you are a billionaire, but you have to think about it from the standpoint of the average person.
Well, no, class warfare. Come on, that's what the donkey's screaming on the DNC logo. But you're right; it gives them a pivot. I think you ought to do a lot of promises from Donald here. But read the fine print. You know what you get. You get the same old craziness. You get no more insulin money. Your grandmother gets screwed. Meanwhile, every billionaire in town, all his buddies get, and then you go into your class warfare stuff. But fine print, simple phrases like that at the top to organize it, I think will be important for Biden. Because otherwise, he's like Trump. It's a mishmash of stuff. And whoever is not the mishmash communicator will do well, I think, in this debate.
I mean, I think the difference between having a passable debate for Biden and having a good debate for Biden is whether at the end of this debate there is a discernible message.
Yeah. And second term, what do you get?
Yeah.
What's the contrast? What's the choice?
Yes. I mean, and so all of these pivots, I'm sure, listen, Ron Klain has done more debate prep than anybody in the Democratic Party. He lived through that horrible first debate with us in 2012, so he knows the traps. Biden trusts him. And I've got to believe he is working on this. Remember the difference, Plouffe, between the first and second debate. Ultimately, I mean, we had a few hiccups after the first debate when, Obama was kind of adjusting his approach to the debate. But at the end of it, in the last day, he went off and wrote down, his the way he wanted to answer the most likely 14 questions on one sheet of paper. It was 14 answers front and back, and he carried that sheet with him until we got to the debate. And they were lines, they were arguments, they weren't like treatises on policy, and he understood what he needed to do. Biden needs that. He needs to know how he's going to, what are the pivot lines on each of these things? What are his imperatives? And at the end of the day, what is he driving? What is the message that he is driving here? And,
Well, yeah, David, listen, we're not there, but my assumption is we know a lot of the people who are helping Biden prepare, that they know they want to avoid the traps. And so that's what makes these debates so fascinating, is it's all in Joe Biden. And of course, Joe Biden has to know these are the most important 90 minutes of his long political life and a pretty important 90 minutes in American history. So he has to deliver here, right?
Yeah, because they bet all the chips. No president's ever pulled this move because they need the jump start.
They need it.
And it's either going to work or it's going to blow them up on the pad. And Axe and I have argued about this.
Let me just go to that scenario.
Yeah, but that's what I wanted to do too. Let's do the day after version 1 and 2. What do you do if you're Biden?
Yeah, say Biden does not do what we suggest he might and he should, and just has a bad night. What if he does have a senior moment or gets overly defensive or whatever? I mean, we don't have to paint a picture. You know what a bad night looks like.
Well, could be the bad night to end all bad nights. There's potential.
I mean, there's chatter in the Democratic Party that I have dismissed because Joe Biden is the nominee of the Democratic Party. I mean, this isn't 68. The conventions don't nominate people.
Yeah, I agree with all this. We've talked about it before. But if it's a really bad night, the pressure on Joe and Jill, because they're the only ones who can change the trajectory, will not be small. I don't believe.
Yeah, so Plouffe, play it out.
It's a horrifying prospect. But if he has a bad night, so by the way, passable to me is not good enough in this race. He needs to have a good night. But passable, status quo, not good, but, we move on. A bad night, I think a couple things. We will see prominent Democratic voices, probably starting off the record, maybe some on the record saying we need to revisit this. There'll be calls on the convention. The Biden campaign will say, of course not. We've got another opportunity September 10th. By the way, if I were the Trump campaign, I'd say I'm not doing it. We've seen all we need to say.
Right.
Biden can't handle this. So then you've lost. Because, by the way, Trump's convention matters more because he'll have his new VP. But, it's mostly partisans that consume the convention. There are only two big moments that we know of left, these two debates. That's it. And if you squander this one in a race you're, behind in, and my guess is Trump pulls the carpet out on the other one, you're in deep trouble. So I listen, if he has a moment where he kind of wanders, where he's not making any sense, he has issues with stamina, and I think we'll get a sense how voters respond to it. And if they're worried about it, if their concerns aren't assuaged, I think there'll be a lot of, I don't expect that to happen. Listen, if you were going to judge us, you're probably not going to have the Aaron Sorkin thing we'd like, which is Biden has an amazing night and he puts the rate. It's going to be kind of in the middle somewhere, which is he did enough to.
I'm sure Sorkin's sending in remarks too, thinking maybe that would be good. Can deliver that, but yeah.
They've got enough speech makers there.
But David, I think this is the best opportunity to adjust the structure of this race.
Absolutely.
And the thing that concerns me is, I think it's close, but we know where the wrong tracks are. He's an incumbent. Incumbents all over the world are getting their ass handed to them. And if you look underneath these polls, and no one poll we can trust, but, bleeding with young people, with black voters, with Hispanic voters. But then we are seeing some resiliency with white voters. Now, the Fox News
And
poll
seniors.
had him up with rural voters, which cannot be true.
Right.
But he's showing some, maybe he'll outperform 2020 there, which is important. But the current speed,
primarily probably because of older voters. But,
right.
Yeah.
Current speed and course is we're heading to another
lose.
Donald Trump 4 years.
Yeah.
And we know sometimes we've all been part of races where you're like, man, it's going to take a fucking miracle. This doesn't take a miracle. If enough people say Biden's got more of it than I thought, and he had some energy, and I think he's up to this, that's all it requires.
Yeah, no, it can restart and put them on new railroad tracks. Problem is they want to fire the president, and only the president can fix whether or not they want to fire him. So what I think the real danger is if he has a bad night, and then we're talking about a good night, to be fair. And I agree, the medium night is just more of the same, which is also a loss for Biden because it doesn't change the likely outcome, at least in the short term. But if he has a bad night, the Democratic hacks will start to leak and go crazy, and that'll all happen. The problem is there will be, and I think you will hear it, a legitimate, serious person argument that, look, he's not up to this. This is President of the United States we're talking about. And we have to have this discussion. And that'll break out in the non-hack world, the thought leaders, whatever you want to call them. And that'll be that pressure on them. And remember, his poor kid, I think, did get a bit of a bum conviction there, sentencing the pressure on Joe, who knows he's older too. So I don't rule out the switch being thrown if it's really bad.
That pressure is going to build because there's another trial that's more serious that's coming in September.
Okay, gentlemen, we will be back in a minute, but we have to pay a few bills.
Murphy, I am freaking tired. You know why I'm tired?
Tell me.
I'm tired because I am on the road and I am not at home sleeping on my Helix mattress. And I've said to you many times, the key to a good night's sleep for me is a mattress that knows me, that has my particular idiosyncrasies in mind, and that's Helix.
Well, I'll tell you, I gave you the advice not to join the circus, but as usual, you didn't listen. So you're lucky when you come back.
We are the circus, brother.
When you come back from the road show and opening that new water park in Oklahoma, you have a Helix mattress, which is tuned into you. You know what I like about the Helix mattress? And I followed your lead, and we finally got a kids one, but I'm not above taking a quick nap there on it. It's comfortable.
Or here.
Yeah, or anywhere. But look, they offer, get this. I mean, who else does this? Helix offers a 100-night trial and a 10 to 15-year warranty. So when you have your mattress, you're covered. If you don't like it, you can get out of it. They really back up the product.
Yeah, and everybody's unique and everyone sleeps differently. And that's why Helix has several different mattresses to choose from, each designed for specific sleep positions and feel preferences. And, I took that test. They sent me one that
You do it online, right? It's easy. It takes a couple minutes and they zero it in.
And it's really, really great. And then the mattresses come.
Now explain that to me, because I don't really want to do a Three Stooges thing with the mattress going upstairs.
They come in a box. No, they come in a box, and you cut the plastic off of it, and the mattress unfurls, and you think, how could this be? And it's pretty amazing.
It's like the movie The Blob. It just kind of grows until it either
but
you or you got a mattress.
It's a great mattress. When I don't understand the science of it all, but it's really great. And the setup is very easy, delivered right to your door for free. And here's the thing, Helix mattresses all come with a 10 to 15-year warranty, depending on the model.
Well, what I love about it, because, look, let's be honest, we're in politics, so our listeners right now are like rolling their eyes. We don't trust those two jokers. Look at some of the candidates they unloaded on us. So don't take our word for it. Helix has been awarded the #1 mattress picked by GQ and Wired magazine.
Yeah, man, it's even recommended by multiple leading chiropractors and doctors of sleep medicine as a go-to solution for improving your sleep.
So how do people buy one?
Helix is offering up to 30% off all mattress orders and 2 free pillows for our listeners.
Go to helixsleep.com/hacks. That's helixsleep.com/hacks.
And remember, this is their best offer yet, and it won't last long, so act now.
As the Sandman says, go to helixsleep.com/hacks.
With Helix, better sleep starts now. My question to you guys is, and Plouffe, you know Biden very well, as I do. The idea that that he would ever step away, but let's say he did. Let's say he did. What would that convention look like? Who's going to decide who the nominee should be?
Well, again, big asterisk. This is a fantasy that's not going to happen, right? But if it did, voters aren't involved. It's all the delegates. And basically, you'd have a number of candidates announce they're running. What would that race look like? Well, they'd do interviews everywhere they can. They'd raise money for ads. They'd actually have to go to states and visit with delegates. We'd have debates. It would actually dominate the political world, obviously, for those 7 weeks. And, I think you'd probably have 4 to 7 people run. It's basically a bake-off. And my guess is no one would get on the first ballot in Chicago, get 50%. So it'd be old school in that way.
But what about an early bandwagon, though? If he had a real sexy ticket that went in the media big, looked like a winner, Whitmer and Warnock, something like that, that's very sexy, and it starts big and loud early, I think there could be a bandwagon effect, as long as the head of the public employee unions are for it, who have a lot of those delegates.
There is a complication here, which is the vice president.
Yeah, big one.
Yeah, and presumably she'd run. But I think it would be, Mike, you're right. Maybe a ticket emerges and you get to the point where like 50% of the delegates publicly have said they'd support that ticket. So that's one option. But that would take a little time to come together. So, you'd have this crazy situation where you're basically trying to appeal to a few thousand voters. And, some of them are independent.
Crazy.
Others are part of unions. Others, the governor has a lot of control of some of these delegations.
Yep.
So it's crazy. I think the good scenario is Biden comes out of this viewed as sailing past expectations, having a few dominant moments with Trump, people in the Democratic Party feeling a lot better. And my guess is you'd see maybe a 2-point swing, which, by the way, would be enough to put him ahead in a Pennsylvania or Wisconsin.
Right. He could have a momentum effect. And then does Biden do the move of, you know what? I spent 90 minutes, made my case. He proved he's crazy. No more debate. And you're Biden, you bolt it down. Tempting.
So let's talk about the other scenario. By the way, while we were chatting here, Chris LaCivita, Trump's manager, put out a tweet saying, heading to West Palm, question is, who is with me? And it does make you wonder whether they're planning to unveil a VP candidate tomorrow before the debate, to try and dominate the news going into that.
I don't see the upside in it. The debate will dominate the news. They're wasting their firecracker there, I think. But
I don't know. I mean, that's the way it sounded to me. And I thought he would want all his potential VPs at the debate spinning for him.
Yeah.
So, and maybe they would be anyway, but it's an interesting thing. Maybe LaCivita's just fucking with us. It could be that too.
That would be my guess.
Yeah, that would be his style.
Kind of the MO,
But let's consider the other possibility. Trump is bad Trump. Trump is the, rally Trump, first debate Trump. Biden does what we suggest he needs to do. What does that do to the race? What does that do to these these Haley people who are hanging out? Does that affect the structure of the race, or is this all about Biden?
It gives Biden a way to go run the table for a while, make some progress. I would go right to the pop states, man. I'd be in Wisconsin, Michigan, Pennsylvania overnight and go do stuff. And now Biden looks like a winner. He's back. The press will go for that narrative big. So you got to feed them pictures and a campaign that shows that surge of enthusiasm for Biden. And I would think about weaseling out of the other debate if I could pull it off, if Trump was really bad.
one other thing before on the Biden side of things. Presumably, if he doesn't do well, that you've got to kind of tune up the attacks on Trump after the debate, and you got to irradiate him and take some moments from the debate. And I mean, it probably becomes more important. If Biden has some good moments, you'd run some stuff featuring Biden having good moments that are probably on the attack. If Biden has a bad debate, you probably have to irradiate Trump for a while here and until you figure out what's going on here.
The Kennedy thing might come to life even more. I just saw a statewide poll in a mountain state that Biden's never going to carry. But still, Trump's underperforming normal. But the ballot and the three-way, only 3 points between Biden and RFK, and RFK was in the high teens. So if Biden stumbles, the press will just go to him as the other person. And that's, another cancerous problem.
You guys mentioned something earlier that has haunted me for a while, which is there is an anti-incumbent mood all across Macron's in trouble. We're going to see a new regime.
Sunak's going to get murdered.
Britain.
Yeah.
It looks, there's a by-election. I don't know exactly when in the next few days in Canada that could doom Trudeau.
Yeah, Modi, South Africa, everywhere. Anybody in charge is
getting punished.
Yeah.
So Joe Biden needs to understand this, because he is by instinct the ultimate institutional candidate. He has spent his whole lifetime in
8 decades in politics.
He believes in it. The most instructive thing was when the prosecutor came out with that language about how he appeared in their interview of him, and described him as a confused old man. And he did the press conference after, and someone asked him about the polls, and he said, "I'm the most qualified candidate." And that's the way he thinks. He is a product of the institutions. He is offended by Donald Trump because he's an anti-institutionalist. I mean, I'm offended by that too, but that's dangerous in an environment in which people are very jaundiced about institutions.
It is dangerous.
And they're mad about other stuff too. I mean, he's got the incumbent generic problem, and he's got the inflation problem, which kills you. Yeah, other than that, he's doing great.
But he has to understand why people are pissed off.
Yeah, and they're pissed off globally. So that just puts an even bigger premium on don't go down, defend your record land. Yeah. It's a loser. Now, but David, your question about the structure. So let's say, which is something I'll think about often between now and Thursday, Trump has a really bad performance, as you said, and Biden actually overperforms. Structure of the race. So I think, you mentioned Haley voters. I think there's some older, senior citizens. I think there's, college-educated suburban women and men who are undecided now because they're worried about Biden's fitness. I think if he has a good night, he can answer those questions, and I think perhaps move those people in his column. The question I have, and it's a question I don't have an opinion on it yet, is these younger voters of color. Yeah. I don't think, yes, of course I'm not sure they have the reference that he slipped. They just think things aren't good. They kind of like the Trump show. They think Biden's a lot more older than Trump than he is. So that is my question. I'm not sure a good debate performance fixes that part of his problem. But, I think it does affect swing voters as we traditionally think of them. But we have this is a weird race, man. If you believe any of these polls, listen, the battleground state he's doing best in Wisconsin, which is the whitest of the battleground states.
Right,
yeah,
right.
Exactly. It's both good and bad news simultaneously. Does that mean fatal problem with voters of color? Or if there's one thing in politics you ought to be able to do as a Democrat is get people who almost always vote Democratic back.
Yeah.
So I think if there's any revert to mean in this mad world we're in, Wisconsin is a great signal for Biden because there's nowhere to go but up among voters he ought to be able to get. He may underperform. Maybe Georgia doesn't make it, although Georgia's tightening a little too. All the Sunbelt ones where he's been being killed this last round have gotten a little better for him. So I don't, this one, Plouffe is totally right. It's a crazy one because all the rulers don't quite, now we're living in base 8 world where the rulers are a little different.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I take the Wisconsin thing as more of a good potential sign for Biden than a bad one.
I agree.
But it is really interesting, and it says a lot about the changing bases of the parties that that he's that his best shot are those. Remember, it wasn't that long ago when the theory was Democrats are ascendant because they're going to be able to compete in these Sunbelt states because of African American voters, because of Hispanic voters, and it may be an artifact of the fact that we have an old white guy running, and that is a temporary kind of situation. But we're in a much different place than I think people expected.
I'm going to stick in a shameless 40-second commercial for the EV Politics Project, evpolitics.org, because we're raising money to go into Michigan, a state I know very well, and make the 25,000 extremely good-paying EV jobs there famous. It's not about EVs; it's about jobs.
Right.
And the Biden guys, they've got this huge, beautiful layer cake there, and they haven't touched it. One plant has Chinese investors, so they're afraid. No, tell the story.
Yeah.
I've done 3 successful governor's races in Michigan. Let me tell you, jobs that involve sparks and a good paycheck sell like crazy. And it is the biggest secret in Michigan and Georgia, by the way, massive number of new manufacturing jobs. And Biden ought to claim credit.
For sure.
This is something, by the way, we didn't discuss, but when the economy comes up, there has been a manufacturing boom.
Huge.
And it's being felt. Michigan has 44, I think, new factories in the last
we do
few
a
years.
map in our pitch on it. It's unbelievable. It looks like the state has measles. All the new facilities. We're talking $19 billion of investment in things that create manufacturing jobs, not coding, not flying saucer therapy, jobs that people in Michigan that he needs to understand. Yet it's the biggest secret in Michigan and Georgia. And for that matter, Arizona and Nevada, but really Michigan and Georgia.
Well, and Mike, as you know, Trump's trying to weaponize the EVs against Biden.
Right.
So this makes this even more important. And listen, I'm not sure there's a Democrat alive who talks more passionately and authentically about building an economy for people who work with their hands, who don't go to college. Like this is Biden's home base.
Yeah.
It's a jobs thing. Take the green out. They have the yuppie green vote. It actually polarizes. That's one of the problems when selling EVs. The white polar bear stuff's a disaster. But jobs, vehicle performance, these are manufacturing jobs. We don't make a lot of... Anyway, I could go on for hours. Check out the website. A lot of blogs on there and stuff about it. But I keep pounding on Democratic world to you got an ace up your sleeve. You ought to pull it.
Yeah. So, David Plouffe, do you have anything you want to sell before we go?
No, Murphy's idea to me sounds great. But listen, they'll do more of that. But, politics, of course, is more national now. But these are also mini governor's races. So to think through in Michigan, in Georgia, how do you tell stories that, of course, are not distinct from what you're saying nationally, but you put that extra sauce on is critical. And I'd like to see more of that, quite frankly, because again, if these
deliverables actually matter.
That people buy.
Yes.
It's not billions of dollars. It's not a bill. It's like plants in towns that people know.
Right, exactly.
Well, Plouffe, we know you, and we're happy that you're here because you know a lot. And so we hope you come back. Your podcast is called The Campaign Manager. We'll all be watching I always joke about the fact that when it's not just applies to Biden and Trump, too, when these guys go out and perform, there's performance anxiety. They perform and we get anxious.
No kidding.
Well,
I'm going to be watching this debate with a bottle of whiskey and a revolver, just staring at the TV, and maybe a flight plan to Portugal.
Yeah, no, I mean, listen, we've been all part of presidential races, other important campaigns and debates. For me, by far, I've got more anxiety about this one than anyone I was personally involved in.
Yeah.
Stakes are higher.
I really do.
Well, people, it's going to be something. All right, guys.
All right, see you guys.
Great to be with you. We'll see you on the other side.